Welcome everyone. Today we talk about Nigerian startup ecosystem and we have amazing experts who join us right now to discuss about the opportunities for entrepreneurs and investors in Nigeria. So we are ready to start and I would like to invite our first experts, the Juliets. If you can join us, please, if you can introduce yourself first and then I will start our panel discussion.
All right. Hello, everyone. I am Aojo Juliet Uchimana from the Office of Innovation. I'm representing my national coordinator, Mrs. Victoria Fabumi, at the moment. Yes.
Thank you so much for joining us today. And we discuss about the opportunities for entrepreneurs and investors in Nigeria, and especially for international entrepreneurs and investors. So my first question would be, why Nigeria and why now? What do you think makes Nigeria as a compelling destination for international investors and founders in 2025?
Thank you for the question. Is the largest youth population in Africa. I mean, over 40% of our population is youth, is under 25. And so the appetite for innovation is real. There's this drive for entrepreneurship, from fintech to agri-tech, health tech to logistics. Our startups are solving real problems at scale. Lagos, Abuja, and other emerging hubs like Kaduna and Port Harcourt are fast becoming global magnets for talent and innovation. I mean, in 2022 alone, Nigerian startups raised over $1 billion in funding, accounting for nearly 30% of all startup funding on the continent. And so we offer both scale and talent density that are hard to find in most emerging markets. Now, what sets Nigeria apart today is not just the demographic dividend, but the convergence of certain critical forces. One is an evolving policy environment where Nigeria is one of the few African countries with a dedicated startup act, which was co-created by ecosystem stakeholders and the government. The Nigeria Startup Act, which is currently undergoing state-level adoption, provides a clear framework for startup registration, access to incentives, regulatory sandboxes, and investor protections, all in the bid to create an enabling environment for startups to thrive. Another certainty is ecosystem maturity. Lagos alone houses over 400 active startups. In 2023, Nigeria accounted for 29% of all venture funding in Africa. I mean, this report was gotten from Partech Africa. And despite global downturns, Nigerian startups continue to attract funding because of the resilience and adaptability of the founders. I can also say that there's this diaspora confidence and returnee trend where some Nigerians who have, been abroad, working abroad, are coming back home to either invest or start up something, to solve local problems. So, in a nutshell, when compared to other markets, Nigeria is unique in its combination of market size, entrepreneurial drive, policy alignment toward innovation. In 2025, with increased government attention to digital transformation, it's not just a good time, it's a strategic time to invest in Nigerian tech. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your contribution. That's very important what you mentioned. It's a great starting or opportunity for international investors. And I also would like to invite the Mr. Raphael to join our discussion. And I would like to discuss investment hotspots on maybe some specific industries which may be very attractive for international investors. Before we start talking about the investment, Mr. Raphael, if you can please introduce yourself and tell how you relate to startup world in Nigeria, please.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Isa Raphael, and I'm the MD CEO of Gracesoft Technologies here in Nigeria, based in northern Nigeria, Kaduna precisely. Excited to be here, and this is exciting. Thank you. It's a very great question that you've asked. Interestingly, just like the last speaker has said, Lagos has got over 400 startups, and we do think that the investment hotspot scene in Nigeria is really diverse and beautiful. In Lagos alone, you see a lot of spring ups of fintechs, and that's because of the kind of region that you have there, in Lagos. But beyond that, you would see, if you come up north, that where you have most of the rural communities, you also now see agri-tech startups solving problems related to the agricultural value chains, and market access for smallholder farmers, as well as solving problems related to food security, supply chain and the rest of them. Post-COVID, you see a lot of telemedicine sort of startups solving problems related to health. So we have that rise in health tech, as well as problem solving in the areas of clean tech, clean energy, renewable energy as well. These are really interesting investment, points in Nigeria over the last few years that has really started to gain traction because of the unique things that has happened, across the world. So if I were to very directly point investors to hotspots in Nigeria where they should focus, it'll undoubtedly be in the areas of fintech, agtech, health tech, and in renewable energy. So yes, that's it for me.
Thank you so much for your contribution. And also, I would like to ask Juliet again regarding the support maybe from government when it comes to international investments. So, if foreign investors want to go to Nigerian startup ecosystem and invest into local startups, if there are any policies or government specific programs exist to support foreign investors to bring capital into the country. Juliet, maybe you have some add-ons on this question.
Okay, great question. Nigerian government, through agencies like the National Information Technology Development Agency, specifically the Office for Nigerian Digital Innovation (ONDI), we focus our support on founder readiness, infrastructure, and access. Some practical ways through which we support early stage startups are one, incubation and acceleration through structured programs like the Idea Hatch Incubation Program, popularly known as iHatch, implemented in partnership with the Japan International Cooperation Agency, JICA. We support startups across 37 states to move from idea to MVP, which the program is a 5 month intensive program that includes mentorship, legal support, business development, and investor readiness. And it's a free program. We've also recently supported accelerator programs like Innovest Ignite to embed strong governance, validation, and product market fit early in the journey. We have other programs like programmatic incentives where over 40 labeled startups on the NSA portal and under the Nigeria Startup Act have been labeled, and these startups gain access to programmatic incentives like the Gulf Information Technology Exhibition, GITEX Global, and training incentives for hubs, which we recently did you know, where hubs will be trained and then they'll go back to their local regions to train startups under their sphere. Another program is the regulatory sandboxes and market access, where we're partnering with MDAs to pilot regulatory sandboxes that enable startups to align with government requirements early on. Through these sandboxes, we are creating pathways for startups to engage with MDAs, build capacity, and scale their solutions within public sector framework. There's also the tech infrastructure support. Last year, we kicked off partnerships with organizations like JICA to develop fab labs in Abuja, the FCT of Nigeria, giving startups access to prototyping equipment and industrial grade tools for product testing and MVP development. I mean, the result you'd ask is we are shifting from grant dependent founders to product and revenue driven entrepreneurs. This isn't just about funding, but about capacity building and smart market exposure.
It seems that international investors can benefit in getting access to these entrepreneurial hubs and communities in order to pick the right startups to invest in. As you mentioned, not only invest, but also build up collaborations and partnerships. And I would also like to invite Yemisi Ezidi to join our conversation and discuss a bit more in depth about the power of public and private partnerships. And please, Yemisi, if you can introduce yourself, first of all, tell a few words about how do you relate to a startup world.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much for having me on this. My name is Yemisi Esidi and I'm joining in from Abuja, Nigeria. So I work with a number of incubator and accelerator programs supporting founders across Africa launch their ideas, scale operations, and become investment ready. I also own a management consultancy that provides coaching and mentorship services to startups across Nigeria and just helping them with the documentations they need to secure the funding they require to scale their operations or launch their ideas. So those are some of the work I do in the startup ecosystem.
Thank you so much for your introduction. So, my question, do we see collaborations between startups and the private sectors, maybe some government bodies and universities? Do you have any success stories or some case studies to mention about these joint ventures and collaborations across the ecosystem?
Yes, most definitely. So one of the things that I've done in my short career is working in the public-private partnership office in one of the states governments with one of the state governments, and I saw firsthand how the impact of collaboration between the private sector, the government, and education. So with the partnership with the private sector, governments were able to execute a number of projects, programs that enhances quality of life, improved revenue generation for the state as well. So things like the tax office, being able to automate how government receive tax from people who live in the state, and also things like land administration system. Those were some of the public-private partnership projects that were executed while I was working in that office. In general, the academic sector provides access to talent and research for the startups to leverage on and build. The government provides the infrastructure, the enabling environments, ensuring that people who are coming to build in their location, in their country, in their states are compliant to key regulations, which in a way protects the citizens from being defrauded or being harmed. And the private sector builds businesses that aligns with government objectives most times, whether it is protecting the environment, promoting education, access to education, or access to finance, and so on. So a case study, for instance, is Paystack, right? So the government had an objective to improve mobility, making it easier for people to move from one place to the other. Part of this would be payments. How are payments received if you want to book a train? or if you want to book a ferry, whatever it is. So Paystack are integrated in most government platforms, making it a lot easier and seamless for people to access some of these services. We also have some financing that was provided to logistics businesses in places like Lagos State. Mr. Raphael mentioned how there are over 400 startups alone in Lagos. That's because the government has created an enabling environment for innovation, for people to build businesses that align with their key objective, which could be creating jobs. We've also seen that with education, businesses like ULesson, and government leveraging on their platforms, their systems to enable access to education for people in the grassroots. And also organizations like startups like Thrive Agric, partnering with the CBN, with different agricultural agencies in Nigeria to support local farmers and ensure consistent production of food. So those are some of the examples of successful case studies that shows the impact and importance of collaboration between the government, private sector, and academy.
Thank you so much for your contribution. That was very insightful discussion about the power of public-private partnerships and the case studies of such examples of the collaboration results and the opportunities we have in this domain. However, what we talk today is also about international entrepreneurs and investors. And Africa is not only Nigeria, we have many countries which we have on the continent. But my next question would be, can be Nigeria as a launchpad for Africa, can be as this starting gateway point or starting regional hub for investors and entrepreneurs who aim to launch and operate or invest across the continents. So I would like to ask Raphael to join our discussion and maybe share a few thoughts if Nigeria can serve as a strategic gateway for international funders and investors looking to expand across all Africa.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. Nigeria indeed can serve as a beautiful launchpad for Africa, especially for the international community. Because Nigeria clearly has got a very large population, of course, of over 200 million to start with, and a very big consumer base, right? When entrepreneurs build products, it is so that people can consume. The more consumer you have, the more successful you say you've become with the startup that the more traction you can have with the startup that you're working, right? And so we in Nigeria have got that wonderful big size consumer base, and beyond that, if you look at an average Nigerian, we are entrepreneurial in culture. Compare Nigerian with other neighboring African countries, you find out that the Nigerian, we call it the Niger spirit, interestingly, right? Are more entrepreneurial in nature and we're vibrant, high spirited, and that's just an ad, right? But beyond that, the technology ecosystem in Nigeria is also mature, really big, and made up of a lot of young people. So we have a really strong and young and vibrant community of people who are entrepreneurial and very digitally connected. Okay, and one of the other reasons why this is really important and why I think Nigeria is mostly is best positioned to be a launchpad for Africa is because of what I said earlier on, the diversity in the Nigerian economic landscape. So if you look at the various geopolitical zones of Nigeria, you find out that take a look at the southwest, where you have Lagos, for example, a particular kind of startups thrive there. So you're not just looking at Nigeria as a one region that does one kind of startup portfolio, startup type. So in Lagos, for example, you have a lot of fintech and stuff. And if you come to the north, you have a lot of agri-tech startup type stuff. If you go over to other places like say the south, you might get a couple of creative tech type stuff. If you go over to other sides, you might get a lot of health tech startups. And I think that's just really interesting because it creates a sort of a great ground for piloting new ideas, different kinds of ideas, depending on what investors from the international community want to invest in. It gives you the opportunity to look at various parts of Nigeria and ask questions like where are the best place to test out these kinds of ideas, where are the best place to find these kinds of startup, which is where we probably are interested in investing in. I think Nigeria's got a really interesting diversity that has made us really unique, and I think that's a big plus. And beyond all, that's the best reason why Nigeria stands firm as a launch pad for Africa.
Thank you so much for your contribution. That was the discussion about the opportunities for Nigeria to be a launchpad for all African continents. We also coming back to the discussion of international investment opportunities. Investors interested in selecting the promising startups, but equally they're interested into relevant and attractive exit strategies. I would like to discuss a bit more about the exits and returns in Nigeria and would like to invite Yemisi to join our discussion. And my next question would be, what's the current landscape for exits in Nigeria? Do we see some merger and acquisition deals, any strategic acquisitions, IPOs, any examples of how investors or how startups they exit their business from their operations maybe into some next stages?
Okay, so we are seeing a growing trend of mergers and acquisitions in Nigeria, Africa at large, especially in Nigeria. So in Q1 of 2023, I believe we had mergers and acquisition over $700 million, most of which were from Nigeria. And then that trend has continued to grow. We've not yet had any IPOs yet. I know startups like Flutterwave and TZT have been having that conversation for a bit now. But in terms of exits, I think the most popular one is the Paystack exit with Stripe, and then loads of mergers and acquisition, both within the local ecosystem and globally. So we had Lemfi, which is a fintech, recently acquired another Irish fintech. We have local startups merging as well. We had Rise and Chaka, both of which were fintech, Flutterwave and Bankly. AutoCheck also had a number of acquisitions across the African ecosystem. So this just shows the room for growth. So businesses are identifying opportunities to collaborate, merge, gain new grounds, gain new market, reach more audience, improve their ability to stay sustainable, cash flow, profit, reach a wider market, right? Which improves their ability to stay on for longer. So this definitely shows a positive investor outlook, and also shows that investors stand a chance to get tangible returns by investing in startups in Africa or in Nigeria, especially.
Thank you so much for your contribution. We discussed possible exits in return for investors in Nigeria. And we now in 2025. So my next question would be how the Nigerian venture capital ecosystem looks like in 2025. Do we see some rise of international funds coming to Nigerian ecosystem? Any changes? I would like to ask Juliet to join our discussion and reflect of what is the VC stage in 2025 looks in Nigeria.
Absolutely. Nigeria's venture capital ecosystem in 2020 more nuanced, maturing rapidly. Despite global investment contractions post 2022, Nigeria continues to attract meaningful investment. And a few key trends would apply here. There's the international funds, which are localizing at the moment. Funds like TLCom, Ventures Platform, and all of that now co-invest regularly with international players. Funds from the Middle East, like Global Ventures and Asia, are also showing increasing interest, especially post Dubai Expo and GITEX Africa. There are more local capital formation. In the past, most Nigerian startups were funded by international capital. Today, we're seeing local funds backed by family offices, pensions administrators, and sovereign wealth entities like the Nigeria Sovereign Investment Authority becoming more active. There's also diverse funding instruments. There's a shift from traditional equity-based VC toward revenue-based financing, and a whole lot more. The implication of all of these evolving is that VC landscape, the evolving VC landscape is the cost of capital reducing, the depth of mentorship is increasing and the ecosystem is becoming founder friendlier.
Thank you so much for your contribution. We discussed the venture capital trends in 2025 in Nigeria. If we talk about the global trends, we see that more and more impact investments happen, and also purpose driven investments, and more founders actually focused on building ethical, sustainable, socially driven enterprises. So my next question would be to discuss the global interest and impact growth in Nigeria when it comes to social impacts and ethical goals, and how the Nigerian startups they actually combine both. I would like to invite Mr. Chimdalo to join our discussion. Before you answer my question, please introduce yourself and tell a few words about your relation to startup world, please.
Good afternoon. My name is Chimdalu Onwalu. A, I am a research and innovation assistant at the African University of Science and Technology Business Incubation Center. I am representing my boss, Mr. Kingsley Ogudu, who is the hub manager at the Incubation Center. So, with regards the ecosystem, with regards purpose-driven investments in Africa, we actually have a trail of startups that are in that space. Take for example, you have um, Pride Agri, which they work with farmers to help increase their yields and connect them global with global markets. Then we also have then we also have other startups like um, out. We also have like fintech startups that help. You know, um, we also have fintech startups that help small businesses, and then we also have the likes of Cubes, which is looking to assist students to have better outcomes in their academics. So you can see, like in various sectors, we're having startups that are not just profit driven but also impact. Um, at the incubation hub where I work, we have um, some startups also. We try to encourage such startups. So take for example, we have Electronic, which is which is a social impact startup that focuses on helping people with their items through community-driven engagement. Um, we also have one of the alumni of the hub is involved in YAPI, the Youth Animation and Post-Production Initiative, which is training about 6,000 um, youths on animation. So um, there's a huge, should I say, market, right, and space for impact-driven startups. So um, investors that are looking to come into Nigeria to invest in impact-driven startups. There's like an array of options. There's just like a lot of them right now.
Thank you so much for your contribution. That was the discussion about the opportunities for investors to find a relevant impact and purpose driven companies and startups. And we also would like to discuss a bit in a wider context when it comes to supporting mechanisms for startups in Nigeria. Please, maybe you can mention some local supporting programs, accelerators, incubators, which play a significant or essential role in supporting entrepreneurs. If you can mention any hubs or any programs which exist, and maybe also investors or entrepreneurs from abroad can tap into these programs to build up the collaboration opportunities. Can you mention any of them?
Over here at the African University of Science and Technology, we have our hub. So there's that. Currently, we are in talks with. We're actually having some trying to set up some initiatives to attract um, international investors. But aside what we are doing at the African University of Science and Technology, you have the Office of um, National Digital Innovation, or NDI, um, I think, remarkable Startup Act, which aims to document startups um, in the government database and provide them with opportunities. Aside from that, we have CC Hub, um, Co-Creation Hub, and then we have the Innovation Support Network. We have Afri Labs. We have um, 54 Collective. We have Respect is also doing in the startup space. So various um, these are various um, from what I've mentioned, some of them are networks. Actually, what's interesting is some of them are networks of incubation hubs like AfriLabs and the Innovation Support Network, and also Founders Institute. So these organizations are actually like networks of hubs. So then, if you want that, so that's in terms of the net, and then for the um, leading uh, leading innovation hubs, you have CC Hub with 4 collectives, um, and then you now have the network, the incubation hubs that are based in educational institutions such as Respect Tech. Then at African University of Science and Technology, we have the AST Inspire Business Incubation Hub, which is where I work. Then also in our university, we have the collective labs in uh, what's it called? In Covenant University, you have Human Labs. And then also I noticed that um, almost every tech, uh, almost every tech uh, organization has um, some sort of programs targeted towards Africans. For example, earlier today I was at the Microsoft Founders Hub Demo Day. So apparently it's been organized by a special office of Microsoft called the um, Office for Africa Transformation. So they try to support startups and encourage them to build AI and cloud-driven solutions on their Azure platform. So these are just some of the networks and hubs in their different forms that investors can tap into.
Thank you so much for your contribution. We discussed the supporting mechanisms and organizations which bring up some significant contribution in helping startups to grow and go next to the next level of their developments. No doubts that Nigeria has the huge opportunities when it comes to talent pool and the opportunities to foster that tech professionals in the fields which can help to develop startups for local and international entrepreneurs. My next question to Raphael would be about the talent opportunities. How international founders and investors can tap into local talent pool to being strong, globally competitive teams? If there are any pathways or any ways to tap into that talent pool in Nigeria, please.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. I like to always state that indeed, what's our greatest asset in Nigeria is basically our youthful and tech-savvy populations, our greatest asset by far. And there's been a growing explosion of self-taught developers, product designers, product managers, digital marketers across the country. And again, we have a couple of really seasoned platforms and tech companies who are committed to increasing the number of these talents that we have. We have the likes of Decagon, Andela, Alt School, Respect of course. As a matter of fact, the government also stepped in with a 3MTT program, to increase the number of tech talents we've got in Nigeria. So again, there's a lot of this talent, all over. But my advice to the international community in terms of investments to access these talents will be to, of course, pay attention to these bodies that are the startup community in Nigeria and the bodies that are responsible for incubation and acceleration of the startups, most of which you've heard in the course of these presentations. But as you also do that, keep an ear down to engage authenticity, right? engage homegrown talents. When I say homegrown talents, of course, I'm referring to talents that are built here in Nigeria, because that local flair that they have, that local taste, is not just a standalone. What it basically represents is the ability, the fact that they understand the local challenges, of Nigeria and Africa by extension. Okay, the innovation is not just coming from within alone, but it has a deep contextual understanding of the local challenges that abound in Nigeria and Africa. What's also interesting is that once you capture talents from Nigeria, like I said in the last meeting, you definitely have most of the challenges that we have here in Nigeria speaks to the ECOWAS region as well. So again, the Nigerian talents are all for grabs and should be your first point of contact. Pay attention to the startup community, pay attention to the incubators and accelerators, and engage authenticity, locally homegrown talent.
Thank you so much for your contribution. Today we discussed the opportunities for tech entrepreneurs and investors from abroad when it comes to going into Nigerian startup ecosystem. And we had amazing discussions, and I would like to thank all our experts who joined us today: the Juliet, Raphael, Yemisi, and Chimdalu. Thank you so much for your contributions and reflections on how foreign entrepreneurs and investors can get access to Nigerian startup ecosystem and get the benefit from joining the Nigerian ecosystem when it comes to talent pool, innovative programs, and also the supporting mechanisms and programs exist for international founders and entrepreneurs. Thank you so much.